All right, we are live. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to CMGR Hangout. Today we are talking about community thinking outside the box, kind of creative problem solving and using creativity to drive engagement, which was actually Patrick's idea. So kind of in the theme of today, Brew's on a plane somewhere, Dom's in a car somewhere, Sarah's in Alaska, and I don't even know where Carrie is. So Patrick has joined me as co-host. And Kristen Cardos has joined us on Twitter and will be leading up the questions there. So I'm really excited to have everyone here today, and I'll have everyone introduce themselves, starting with Rachel.
Hey everyone, super excited to be here. It's been a while since my last panel appearance. I'm Rachel Miller. I'm Chief Listener at Pipeliner CRM, and I also host Social Business Hour Mondays at 1 with Brian Fanzo.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Rachel. Patrick?
Hi, guys. Patrick Helen. I am the Community Manager at CloudLock. I am co-hosting this week because two of our fearless leaders are gone, and so we're going to take over the asylum here. We're going to leave the thing out of gas, parked somewhere in a ditch, absolutely destroy every shred of respectability this place has. That's about it, I think. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Right. Thanks, Patrick. Jen?
All right, so the intros can only get better after Patrick's. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm Jen Chen, Community Manager at Intuit Demand Force. Super excited to be on panel today. It's been a while, so it's good to see everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. And Eric? Oh, you're muted, Eric. 1 second. Can you unmute yourself?
By design, we have to have one person with technical difficulties every week.
This is true. Eric, if you hover over your video, on the top there's a microphone and you can unmute yourself. We'll come back to you when you figure that out. Anyway, let's kick things off. So question 1, what's the first thing you do when you feel stuck on a problem?
Delegate. Also, because this is sort of my idea to start doing creativity stuff, I'll be creative first. Hey, the kind of the main point of this is that one of the things that we all do as community managers is that we're all, in a lot of cases, collaborating online, and we're collaborating in a situation that allows us to be kind of connecting with people that we're not seeing face to face in a lot of cases. And I find that usually if I've got something that I'm trying to work my way through or kind of like brainwave my way around, face-to-face communication ends up being my go-to almost every time, because a great example is like yesterday, there's a person in my office who's trying to figure out a way to come up with a topic for something that he had to write today. He does it every week, weekly column, and he walked over and he was like, I'm stuck, I need something. And I was like, all right, let's just do this. And we did like a Twitter trending search, we looked on Reddit, we just kind of like started picking and choosing little things that might be the creative seed for inspiration. And across 5 or 6 minutes, we found 10 different topics. And then the two of us face-to-face brainstormed them and said, all right, what about this, what about this, what about this? And that was ideal. So for me, I'm still sort of a Luddite in this sense. So if I'm completely stuck, I got to find a human and, talk it out.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the first to admit that if I'm not the expert in the situation, so I collaborate and I crowdsource. And I think we're super lucky being in the community management space is that you have untapped resources to kind of throw your questions out if you're having struggles. And then teams. I think technology, I'm quick to jump on a Hangout, so I work from home. All of my hustles, I'm remote, so collaboration is always over Hangout or Skype, but it's just as effective. So it definitely saves time versus going through long email threads or, perhaps even trying to get somebody on the phone. Collaboration for the win.
Definitely agree there on the collaboration. And, I think we've talked in past CMG or Hangouts about having that source of like stakeholders or people that you go to. Definitely hit them up. Also, a lot of food and caffeine tends to help me, like when I get stuck in my, mode or kind of get like block. I eat a lot of food, or I eat a lot of sugar, or I eat a lot of coffee, or all of the above, and that gets me out pretty quickly too.
So no one just goes straight to Twitter to rant then? Yeah, no, I'm kind of the same. I turn to others. Sometimes I just pick my focus playlist on Spotify and just kind of zone into. A lot of times it's just removing distractions for me so that I can actually like pay attention to the problem and not just multitask. So kind of piggybacking off of that, do you have a creative process in place, or do you kind of just wing it? When I was doing, I don't know if you guys know this, but usually before writing the post, I kind of do some Google research really mostly and just kind of look around. And there was one post that was like, oh, you have to do this like 12-step process for creative problem solving, and like it needs to be this ongoing thing before you ever find the problem. And then someone else was like, no, like just reframe the problem in your mind and think about it from a different way, because the whole point is that like you know that there is a solution, you just have to think of it. And so sometimes looking at it from a different angle will help with that. Kind of like, I don't know if you guys ever read like the Where's Waldo books or I Spy books growing up, but sometimes if you turned them upside down, then you could find Waldo or whatever the I Spy object was easier if you were stuck looking at it the right way.
For me, there's no specific process, I guess, other than, well, yes, there is a process now that I'm thinking about it. It's a two-step. It's, first and foremost, I sort of wing it, and I capture the, what's the past tense of wing? Wung? I capture the wung.
Winged it. You winged it.
There you go. So after I've winged it, I capture said winged in some way, shape, or form, and I repeat it over and over and over again. A good example of this is I was invited to do a storytelling like meetup, like a storytelling slam, and I had a great story that I wanted to tell, and I knew it in that sort of general conversational way that you can sort of like amuse 5 or 6 people at a party with, and I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. It's too long. There's too many asides. So I said, all right, I'm going to tell it to myself while driving, which yes, it's awkward. So I would just drive to work, and I would say it out loud. And after the 4th or 5th time doing that, completely being awkward, thanks, Jen, I made sure that I had sort of like my touch points, and I had the things that I wanted to come back to, and there's no video. I'll get you the video later. And so after the entire attempt at sort of narrowing down what I wanted to say, at that point, I just repeated over and over and over again. Either in my head to my kid. My kid heard this story like 15 times, and then when I got up on stage and actually told it, complete breeze. Like it was fantastic because I hit all the points I wanted to hit. I had moments where I was like, no one's gonna laugh at this, so I'll breeze by it, and people laughed because I'm hilarious. So for me, it's literally I have to have some level of complete just chaos in the process, and then subsequently try to trap the bits and pieces of wonderfulness that came out of that chaos.
That's awesome. For me, I don't tell stories to myself, unlike some people, because that's super awkward. But actually, like what I do sometimes is, it sounds really simple, but just take a walk around the block. Get some coffee, get some sugar. Breathe, step away from your desk. It sounds so simple, but it helps. And then oftentimes when I go back to my desk, I have new perspectives. So basic answer, I have no process. I just step away, and food and caffeine are my answer to everything.
I think my process changes with the deadlines. I think if I have more time, I'll often just shelve it and I'll deal with it later. If it's kind of a pressing issue, that's when you really need to loop people in faster, ask for assistance. And a big fan of just having that crazy, balls out brainstorm session and seeing what sticks, because you never know what actually might be the perfect answer is not something you would ever have considered, but turns out to be a brilliant idea. Also, the collaboration part helps with that.
Should I talk here?
Yeah, go for it.
Yay! Okay, so I think the question is about collaborative process and what we do to make that happen. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so question 2 specifically was, do you have a creative process in place, or how do you wing it? But also tell us who you are, because we missed your introduction.
Oh, yes, thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to be a hangout hanger-on. If you read my 300 character biography, basically, I've been selling and assisting in building events and other association solutions, both for associations and for association industry providers, and just started working with Higher Logic and have realized that although I know a lot of folks within associations, that I don't know a lot of community managers, a lot of the membership directors, and have a great desire to assist and to learn and to try to sit back as much as possible and not get in the way. But I've been in the industry since 2000. My parents owned their own trade show, exhibit design, and build house back in the 1980s and 90s. So I was licking envelopes for their pre-event marketing campaigns when I was probably breaking child labor laws. But very happy to be here. Specifically concerning my own creative process, I think that the focus for me is to whittle down the excess baggage and to try to streamline as much as possible. The worst thing that I think I could do is to try to whittle it down to a toothpick when it needs to be a telephone pole. So I try to make sure that I'm not wasting time testing and just doing so. I like what somebody said about getting away from the desk and getting something into your physical system, because I think that a lot of times, at least for me, there is a tendency to be a little bit overwhelmed by a task at hand and not realizing that you just need a cup of water. I mean, seriously, as simple as that. So take a walk to the faucet, get some water, and things can look a lot better after that.
Great, thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
I thought of something too while you guys were talking. There's a term in the developer world called rubber ducking. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically sometimes developers will actually have this little rubber duck on their desk so that they can explain the problem to them. Because sometimes it's not even that you need feedback from someone, it's just that you need to explain the problem out loud. But I remember, I learned this term because I turned around after one of my coworkers had explained the problem to another coworker, and he was like, "Did you just rubber duck me?" But anyway, just throwing that out there. Sometimes just thinking, literally thinking out loud, talking out loud, will help you kind of reframe that in your head as well.
Mr. Quackington.
Dude, that makes me think of Paddington Bear, Quackington Duck. Anyway. So we're moving through these questions pretty fast. So on Twitter, if you guys have any questions, definitely please let us know. Kristen will pass those in if we miss them ourselves. But question 3, how does redescribing the problem sometimes help with ideation or with generating those ideas?
I think for me, one thing that really helps when you redescribe the problem is, and it sounds, again, so simple, but you see it a different way. And back, to that first question that we were discussing, when you discuss the problem with someone else and bounce it off of each other, sometimes I'll literally sit there and redescribe something multiple times to people, and then that actually gets creative juices flowing because you think about it a different way. As they're saying it to you, you start getting creative juices flowing, things start clicking, and you go and have some coffee and some food, and then awesomeness happens.
Jen, did you just want to say awesome, by the way?
Yes, basically, yes. I'm going to beat Patrick for today's awesome count.
She's
because
totally
I'm awesome and
gaslighting
he's
me.
awesome and
She's throwing
it's
it out.
awesome. I haven't been on an awesome community manager hangout in forever, so I'm gonna make this awesome because you're awesome and everybody else is awesome and Christin on Twitter is awesome and Sherrie's awesome.
She's like, I have a 7-stage process. A, it's awesome. W, it's wicked awesome, etc.
If anyone is counting this
Awesome.
Patrick does not count. He's awesome. But
You just went from a 7-step process from A to W, where you're trying to do is that like poetry term where you like
Spell
haiku?
awesome out loud.
I think Patrick needs to learn his alphabet again.
A.
No, but there's a term.
WESOME.
I know how to spell awesome, but there's a term for when you like make a poem off of the letters of the word.
See, I told you we're driving this.
Someone on Twitter find that and
It's an acrostic.
Right.
You're awesome.
Thanks, Eric. So, Eric, this is your first time with us. Jen and Patrick like to keep track of how many times people say awesome. And they usually do this on the Twitter thing, so now they're getting in as many actual words of awesome as they can on air.
I have the serious problem of being my second degree is an English major, so I appreciate the use of the word awesome, and I also appreciate the use of other words too.
Eric, you're brilliant. You're bodaciously brilliant and rad. That's what you are.
So now that everyone's drunk off of buzzword bingo, does anyone else have an answer to question 3?
I was just going to add, it obviously depends on the specific problem, but I always go back to the source, because sometimes if you have the source restate the problem, often it's not as challenging as it first appears. That's been helpful in my case.
I was going to say that I find that if anyone ever took a philosophy class back in the day, there's that sort of Socratic method exercise that everyone tries to go through where they're like, well, just keep asking question after question after question until you're completely annoyed to no end at the person asking the questions, because they sort of break everything down to the very base assumptions each time, and that actually does really it works really well in this situation. And that, in my case, a lot of times ideation is usually a customer issue or a customer complaint or something that they need enhanced or changed in a product, and in those situations, sort of continuing to, pester your customer with additional questions to narrow down the focus more and more and more gets down to the base functionality of the issue, and so thus an idea in that case can expand. And I think it works on both sides. It works with, if you're trying to be creative with anything, if you're trying to do campaign, if you're trying to put some more types of thought leadership stuff together that you want to be able to make sure that you have something concrete at the end of it, narrowing more and more and more to get down to exactly what the base level is typically helps. Awesome.
Yeah, I think it also helps to remember why you're doing it, and if you take out the negative word, so it's not a problem, it's not an issue, it's an opportunity, where you're in there to kind of make the most of it. I think that also changes your mindset, so you're more able to be creative on a dime versus like, oh man, it's a problem.
One of the examples I'll use of redescribing the problem and reaching the solution is a lot of times past business partners have had, they'll come and they'll start asking me the question, and before they get done with asking the question, they've already found the solution. A lot of times what ends up happening is that the more that I have had conversations with business partners and with clients, they begin to realize, well, you understand this, or maybe even I understand this with their coming to me. The more that we're able to discuss things, not ad infinitum, but certainly very quickly, sort of in one of the benefits from my perspective of Twitter is that I have to get to the point quickly. But the sense is that if we're able to do that, then we're able to get those juices flowing in a meaningful way, and we're all feeling like a part of the collaborative team.
Yeah, I think another thing that I learned from university actually, is I was a design major, for those who don't know, and whenever we were working on logo design or anything like that, we actually were taught to actually write out or draw out or write down like every single idea that came to mind, whether it was good or whether it was horrible. Because until you get those like even bad ideas out of your head, they're just going to keep cycling within your head. So if you can write everything down, and then like if you need to cross it off or whatnot, so you remember, yeah, that was bad. Like, that's what we did. We even sometimes had to draw out like 100 different thumbnail sketches originally for one logo, which blew my mind. But it was really helpful to get those bad ideas out and work your way through and push yourself towards something that could actually evolve into that final creative product. Does anyone else have anything to add to question 3, or are we ready to move? Okay, cruising right along. What is a creative solution that you're really proud of that you've encountered?
Can you clarify this question? You mean like a life hack to how like back to process, or just like an example of something that we've done that we're super stoked on?
It could be either. I was thinking something you've done that you're super stoked about, but also if it's just like a process you've come up with as a creative life hack, that works too.
I'll need to noodle it.
Noodle away. Anyone else?
I'll start.
Okay.
Who else is up? Okay, so the focus for me in the past few years has been on clarity and getting to the point quick. One of the things that I did a few years ago was help to restructure the event outreach for a couple of my clients, and I realized that I needed to get something that was 5 seconds long to be able to interact with people at a trade show, or I was going to miss a lot of opportunities. So I stopped asking people at the trade show booth, "How are you?" and I started asking them, "Who are you with?" And it allowed me to begin the conversation, because almost everybody that was there was primarily there for a company, and then they were able to they needed to find out what was new. So the focus from my perspective with that proud of moment was, okay, it doesn't have to be complicated. A new solution, a good solution, doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be appropriate for the situation.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think we often kind of overthink things when really it's not that you have to come up with some complex solution. You just need to find something that actually resolves the problem.
I'll jump in as well. That I find that sort of the creative solutions that I'm proud of are back to the collaboration piece that I was mentioning before. In that, a good example is my current company. We did a recruiting video that was a spoof of the old sort of 1970s kung fu relocation translations that had the incredibly bad dub. And so we went back and forth about scripts and about sort of discussing exactly what we wanted to say. And the script itself was laid out, but similar to what I was saying before about, like, you know, my slight weird chaos theory, I said, let's just run on it. Let's just start going through it. Let's just go, right? You record your side, I'll record my side. It's like a conversation. You can find it online. I'll throw a link out later. But it was, the creativity part of it was sort of, a lot of it was already created. My coworker had designed everything, had picked the movie, etc. And then iterating on that and sort of coming back to the same source material and trying new things and coming back to it again and starting to really sort of plan moments that we could jump around from was awesome. And we've done that a bunch of times. I've actually worked with them at a different job, and we did a lot of script reviews and a lot of script creation for a lot of the videos that we had done in the past at my last job. And all of those were awesome. They were fun. That was unintentional. That awesome was unintentional. They were fun to create. They were fun to do. But at the end of it, the end product was excellent. And so you could hold it up and say, look, this is something we created together. And the actual creation of it was as fun as the eventual watching of the product. Rad.
That's brilliant. I think one thing, not exactly a creative solution, because ironically, as we're describing creative solutions, we're on the Hangout, and my creative solution to one of the issues that I saw in my community was a Hangout. So imagine that, guys. But yeah, I guess one issue that I saw in my community that I run is that we're having like this gap between customers or community users and the company, and I wanted to make something more personal, make people like us more. Couldn't really send them caffeine or food, so I was like, hey, let's do a Hangout. Let's focus on customer, the top things that they want to know, and make them like us, and it worked. So yay.
Sorry, I got totally distracted because someone shared a cat on the internet.
Oh gosh, I was like, is the silence good or bad? I was like, shoot.
We're all a little bit too humble. We don't want to be too proud.
Here's what distracted me. Tim McDonald actually chimed in and was like, wait, there's a box, because we were talking creative thinking outside the box, and someone was like, here, does this help? Anyway, I was derailed by the cat in the box, which is basically the story of my life. Does anyone else have a creative solution they're proud of? You still noodling, Rachel?
Mine's not really that brilliant, but it's worked for me lately. I don't know what category it'll fall into, but so we're all creating a lot of assets these days, content, video, blog posts, podcasts. So for me, when I'm brainstorming, I actually brainstorm in that specific medium, and that's helped me a lot. So if I know I'm going to be on a podcast, much like, Patrick talks to himself in his car, I actually go through what I want to say, and I record myself, and I listen back to make sure I actually sound smart. And then the same with video. If we're recording, video whether it's a promo video, I brainstorm with my team. We record ourselves, saying stuff, or the hand movements to, see how it actually will translate. Because when you scribble notes on paper, there's no context, so I think if you actually practice, and we're so lucky to have technology to do that, just do a few test runs, and maybe your test run becomes the run, much like Patrick was saying, like the behind the scenes or the raw moment actually could be something fantastic. So I would encourage people to kind of brainstorm in the medium when they're creating something. It does speed up the creative process for me.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. That for my setup, it was pretty much the standard of telling a story. Telling the story made sense, but to have the exact same experience with, like, all right, we're going to record a video. We have a script, we have costumes, we have whatever it is that you're putting together. To hell with it. Turn the camera on. Let's see what sticks. Let's see what comes out of this process, because that's where a lot of the gold is. We've all heard the stories about there's so many people that were. They threw a completely out of nowhere line into a movie, and that's the scene that makes it in, because it's genuine and it's real and it actually lands much better with the audience. That's what you're sort of dancing with in a lot of these cases. And it doesn't matter what it is, podcast, whatever. Writing, there's people that will go through and they'll create an outline, and they'll start their entire process, and they'll know exactly what they want to say. And I am so not one of those people, in that the act of actually putting words on paper, I have no idea where I'm going to end up at the end of it. I just start writing. And so I think I've never thought of it in that context, that the medium itself is the important thing, but it sort of combines the two ideas that you both have, that the medium and get all the bad ideas out, right? Like, let's just start throwing it out there and see what comes back from it.
And Patrick, to go along with what you're saying, it's very important to understand that the medium really is the message in a lot of ways. You can't if we're not aware of the way that people see us, whether it be in a Twitter feed or speaking in public, you can't do a 30-minute presentation through Twitter. and it's important to understand the constraints that you have in that medium. But I don't know that I necessarily knew how to actively engage people through Twitter until I finally started using Twitter for business. So it's important from my perspective to know not just the audience, but how much where I can actually say something effective that's going to be memorable and useful to whatever audience is listening to me.
I think to that point as well, I think it's one of the things that a lot of people are looking into is they try to figure out how to build an audience. They try to be like, oh, I have to have more followers, or I have to have more impact, or I have to have more click-throughs, or whatever it might be. And the popular answer a lot of times is, oh, well, you just have to do, here's the list of 10 things that you have to do to get that level of interaction. But the actual answer a lot of times is the one that no one wants to hear, which is you just keep doing it, right? You sort of put your reps in, and at some point while you're doing that, either it grows or it doesn't. You might be boring. Who knows, right? I'm not going to use any examples, Jen, that are people that might not have the same impact, Jen, of other people, Jen, that on Twitter, you know, if you're putting out a good product over and over again, people are going to start following you. You might not have the same incredible impact of followers that you would if you're specifically putting content out to gain followers, if that makes sense. But those followers a lot of times are transitory. They're not going to be there for long. And I think the same thing goes with click-through rates and, you know, blog posts and comments, etc. You have to speak to the audience the way that the audience wants to consume information and media. And if you do that in a falsified way just to get an audience, that audience is incredibly, incredibly fickle, and they're not going to stick around for long.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, like, consistency is key in putting in the hard work, but just pushing out content for content's sake is not going to move the needle in any way. I think even if you are less active but are sharing things that make people care, like the context, like, why do I care? Why should I pay attention to you? That's what's going to increase your engagement and make things happen. And I don't think Jen's boring.
Thank
Neither
you.
do I.
Thank you. Someone loves me. Someone out there loves me.
I just met you, and I'm not bored yet. So
Thank you. Oh, yeah, no.
I actually just met Jen in person this week at Lithium's conference and watched her get recognized on stage for being super helpful to people all the time in their community. So clearly a lot of people know that Jen is pretty awesome.
I'm pretty sure Patrick.
In other words, Patrick. Oh, sorry.
Patrick was being figurative. I think that he was trying to be funny. I'm not sure if he is yet. I'm still
trying.
He sometimes is, except when he's insulting me.
Oh, bird!
I thought we had an insult count going today. I thought that was
No, that was before Community Manager Hangout, and now you're insulting me for the whole internet to see. I'm gonna go eat a lot after this.
Drink coffee.
Yes, I'll do that.
Water.
Yeah.
So, Patrick kind of transitioned us into question 5, but does anyone else have tips on how getting creative has kind of helped you drive engagement in your community?
I think one thing that's really helped is thinking of how you're going to delight your customers. Think about, you know, what they're used to and what they're not. And then when you step out of the box a little bit and surprise them, say with like a video or a gift or something fun, that's when you get their interest, and that's when you can start the journey to engagement. You know, ask them what they liked about the video, and a lot of stuff that we've done on, you know, my community is stuff that's been outside of the box, and it catches people's attention. It gets actually new users coming in, and that's when, you know, people start engaging, posting, loving us, not insulting me on Community Manager Hangout like some people can think of.
We have a good rivalry going. I actually like the back and forth we have going on.
I do sometimes too.
No, I actually wanted to agree with you though.
Sometimes not.
I'll put the fake fight aside for a moment. But I agree with you that the communication level that you're talking about is huge, in that you stand out when you actually ask your customers what they want, because not a lot of people do. A lot of people are afraid that the customers are going to want something that they can't provide, or they're going to ask for something that they don't want to do. You know, in a lot of cases, if you're dealing directly with a B2C relationship, consumers are going to come back and say, "This is what I'm looking for. This is what's going to make my experience with you perfect." And there's absolutely no way for it to happen. And you're like, now someone asked us that, and that's in the world, and now everyone else is going to point at it and laugh and say that we can't get it. The reality is that having that conversation actually ends up being a lot of times more important than whether or not you actually can complete every aspect of that conversation.
So I just recalled some Brian Fanzo brilliance that I'm going to share with you all. So Brian has one of his awesome hashtags is think like a fan. And I think if I recall that sometimes when I'm doing a lot of engagement with one of my more challenging communities, if you really take the moment and be like, man, what would really wow this person? Like, whether it's behind the scenes or, you know, that special video message they get FaceTime. I think if you really embody that think like a fan, like what's going to get them up and screaming, that really helps and spurs a lot of creative ideas. So think like a fan. Courtesy of Brian Fanzo.
It seems to me that if we are educated just a little bit about what a community's users would want, then we can come in and say, what about this opportunity or that opportunity? And what I see with a lot of the communities that I've become connected to very recently is that those ideas could be like I said before on the chat thing over here. I don't know, but that it's basically, you know, good ideas are inside of bad ideas, like Michelangelo chipping away at a block of marble. We know that it's there, and we just need to kind of work through it to find it. But a lot of times it does take a couple more community, more of the community to chip away at that. And when we do that, then we start with something that's rough, but then we're whittling it down.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I have a couple of questions that came in on Twitter that Kristen brought to my attention. Also, by the way, the cat, Elizabeth said thank you for not blaming her, but just to give a shout out, since I realized I said someone shared a cat, that was Elizabeth. So, all right. So, question from Elizabeth, actually. She wants to know if there are any mind mapping tools that you guys can recommend.
I have kind of a weird answer to this one, in that it's not what I would say is actually a mind mapping tool, but I think I pimp it out every time I'm on one of these Hangouts, and that's Pocket, because for me, an actual good viewpoint of what I'm thinking about or what I'm interested in or what I'm researching is typically the links that I've been visiting to find out more about that topic, that subject. So if I'm trying to do something that is, let's say it's a blog post, and I'm trying to, you know, find some sort of creative inspiration to do that blog post, for me, saving multiple links that are all associated in that realm that I can then sort of access later and read is my number one. It's a sort of an unofficial mind map to see exactly what I was looking for and maybe what I was Googling when I was trying to figure out exactly which angle I'm going to take for this posting.
I actually agree with Patrick for once. So I don't know if that his weird answer and my agreeing on that also makes me weird. Hopefully not. But that totally works. Another thing that I do, as old-fashioned as might sound, is paper and a Sharpie, or like whiteboard it. Sometimes just writing it down on paper and staring at it. Or I like to whiteboard it and stare at the wall like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. I pretend that I'm that genius. That actually helps sometimes because, you know, in this day and age, especially with technology, it's sometimes nice to take a step back and just stare at it, you know, let your creative juices flow, let the inner genius come out.
Yeah, I'm actually with you, Jen. I use paper and pen a lot, to be honest. And actually, kind of piggybacking off of that, Terry said she also likes to write on paper, but she wants to know if you found a digital tool that helps you with the creative process.
As in using like still the same writing concept, or just another way to?
I mean, I think that's basically still just writing on paper if you have like an Evernote pen that
Well, if you have a
records
trackpad,
things
there's a lot
or
of tools that
trackpad.
allow you to do that, and they will actually transcribe your scrawls into readable text.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Anyone have a digital tool that they use?
Can I, yeah, as a person who doesn't use these things, what is the goal when we're mind mapping from your perspective? I think I understand what it means, but what would you say is your goal when you use, whether it's a pocket, a Venn diagram, some kind of a visual tool? What is your reason for doing it?
I do it to trap the mindset that I was in when I was trying to figure out exactly what I'm trying to kind of build. Because let's say you're at work, you're trying to do something for work, you're building a blog post for work, and you're in a very specific mindset, and you find a lot of information, you find a lot of interesting things. When you flip to being at home, or when you flip to the point where you can actually sit down and write, you might be in a completely different zone, and it might not be able to kind of recapture that moment. So for me, that's the way I look at it. I'm kind of weird in this aspect, in that.
Are you?
Yeah, shocker. I can't write unless it's time. Like, I can't sit down and just start typing. My brain sort of, gives me a poke every once in a while, like, hey, do it now. Now's the time. And I can just completely write the first draft in one go. But until that sort of notification happens in my head, it's all blank paper and writer's block. So for me, if I have something that I can reach back to and go, boom, this is exactly what I was thinking when I was trying to figure out which way I was going, that's a definite map for me to start following.
It really, for me, again, it's problem specific. So if I do a lot of nurture campaigns, which tend to be long, like multi-touch and ongoing. So there's a lot of in and out of variety of tracks. So I use a tool called Lucid Chart for that, because I need to visualize where somebody is and where we want them to go, and how they're going to get and kind of shape their journey. So I think for me, the mind mapping, it also helps the prospect or the customer stay in the right mindset you want them to be in, but also helps build your process appropriately.
It almost sounds like we're talking about an automation rule or marketing automation. Again, please forgive me. I'm the guy who sells and markets to people like you, so please forgive me. But the concept, it sounds like, is, okay, so we've got this if-then diagram where we've got 4 or 5, actually, guys, that's 10 tracks. The being able to interact with that data and figure out what might work here, what might not work there, I think is involved with what you're talking about, and that's. But I think that what it seems like the focus is for what you're saying is much more on keeping that creative juices flowing, and ensuring that you're able to come back to that at another time. So, thank you for describing that, and again, thank you for letting me put in my 2 cents.
Awesome, thanks, Eric. Okay, another question. This is from GD at Metaverse Mod Squad. Sorry, I don't actually know your first name, or I would totally use it. Although Rachel told me that I should address you as God and say, "Oh, why the typo?" But anyway, GD would like to know if you have any recommendations for jumpstarting creativity, whether it's apps, techniques, etc. I think we covered this a little bit at the beginning, but just kind of if there's anything that kind of gives you a punch of creativity. I will say for me, a lot of times, I said earlier, it was different Spotify lists or things like that to get the environment correct. But sometimes also it's getting outside, whether it's running or whether it's jumping on my bike. I find that when I'm doing those activities and I'm disconnected from everything else, creative juices just really flow for me. I joke around that I compose like 5 blog posts in my head on an average bike ride, just because I'm not distracted by anything at all. I'm able to like think freely.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of listening to music, especially if you're with a team. It can kind of get everybody pumped up. And then I also think it's healthy to look at what other people are doing. So depending on the problem, like look at your competitors, look at people you admire, seeing how they're addressing that situation, and take inspiration from that. Because in a lot of cases, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can just kind of piggyback off of what somebody else is already doing.
Yeah, I agree with Rachel. I think finding the people that are to your benefit incredibly creative and either interacting with them or reading what they're doing or watching what they're doing is usually a great way to kind of kickstart your own creativity. I think anyone that ever took a creative writing course, you had to do a pastiche at some point, and that's a perfect example of like taking something that's already established and already excellent and using it for your own setup. But then also, to Sherry's point, I don't do this much anymore as a relatively new dad, but exercise, my brain goes to this strange, I hate what I'm doing right now place while I'm like running, for instance. And so while I'm running, I'm desperately thinking of things to distract me from the fact that I'm running. And yes, blog posts, whatever it is that I'm trying to work on right then, if I've got 30 or 45 minutes where I'm out there, slowly killing myself mile after mile, then at that point, a lot of stuff comes out of it.
I agree with Patrick, agreeing with Rachel, also agreeing with Sherrie. They basically said everything that I ever wanted to say. But, actually, no, the one thing that I don't agree on is exercise, because I don't exercise, except I go take a walk and I get sugar. And trust me, guys, some of my best creative ideas is when I'm on a sugar or caffeine high. And then, jot that down and come back to it later, making sure that it's not some insane, crazy idea that I'm going to regret later on. But I would just say, like, one tip is to not be afraid of any ideas. Like write it down, try it out, think it out. Don't ever be afraid. No idea is a stupid idea unless you ignore it.
I want to give Kristen a shout out too, because she said something on Twitter that I thought was really good, which was just that creative to her is just not, like, simply not boring. When you're interesting, people want in, so if you change things up and keep it fresh, like, that's really going to help. And I think it goes back to when we were talking about not, like, trying to overcomplicate it in your head. Like, don't think of creativity as something that has to be, like, this earth-shattering idea that everyone's going to write about. It's just looking at something from a different angle and figuring out how to solve it. And that's something that we do every day, whether we're thinking of it in a creative way or not.
I want to say something to Kristen real quick too, if I could, which is just that's more for her dog than really for Kristen.
Can you translate that for those of us who are human?
Yeah, that's literally, oh my God, there's someone outside that I have to kill. And so every time she's on a hangout from now on, I expect someone to ring the doorbell.
All right, noted. Okay, we have another question here from James, and he wanted to know how you've harnessed the competitive human nature to drive the creative process.
Well, I've literally gamified it with gift cards and trips, and I mean, I guess it depends again on the problem, but I think, yeah, humans are motivated by prizes. So if you're able to, with your teams and incentives like that work, do it. Some people are motivated by other things, but I think a common thread is that we want treats.
Agreed. People are motivated by food and caffeine.
And within the solutions like that of my employer, the gamification is coupled with what they call shamification. I don't know if that word means anything to you, but again, it's just a word that I've learned recently. But the focus is not to go in and sort of put somebody into the dirt. It's you need to do a little bit more than what you're doing. It could be a private message, it could be something else, but you got the gamification, so you've got a badge or something that you've earned as a result of being very active. But then there's also the hey, you also need to make sure that you are involved when you haven't been involved. So shamification, I don't know that it actually, in my context, that it actually is as shameful as real shame. But anyway, that's it.
Well, I think that's the whole reasoning behind leaderboards, right? Like, people are, whether you call it shamification or just our competitive nature, it works. You look and you're like, man, I'm not number one, so I got to up my hustle somehow. And even in a creative environment, that type of philosophy works.
Yeah, the leaderboard at Link made Jen appear in a push notification in my phone like every 30 seconds. So, never follow Jen in a
totally works.
Except for you didn't end up winning, Jen. Not to like
I know. Well,
you or anything here.
Gosh, way to shamify. I have my comments on that. I'll refrain from saying these on the internet.
On the interwebs, where it's recorded.
On the interwebs, for the world to see me being insulted by Patrick and Sherrie.
We have a question from Michael. So he wants to know, how agreeable is disagreement, which is a really confusing statement in my head right now, in collaborative efforts to solve problems? Also, are you better in groups or alone? So I think do you like to use disagreement in collaborative efforts? And
it's essential. If everybody agrees, it's a shit idea. I think you need to have that, even if somebody fakes it, you need to have that kind of voice, someone playing devil's advocate, to be like, okay, wait, what if this happened? Or to really confirm that you need to go forward with it. I get suspicious if everybody agrees really fast.
I actually think you pointed out something really important, though, there, which wasn't just, oh, that's a bad idea. It's, what if this happened? Because I think idea killers in brainstorm meetings will very quickly kill any chance of a good brainstorm. And so it's important to challenge people without just being like, no, that's a terrible idea. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Especially in the context of community, you always have to keep in the back of your mind, like, okay, what's a troll going to say? Or what if, like, the super fan, how are they going to react to hear this news? There's a lot of, personas that you need to keep in mind when making decisions.
For anyone that's seen that, I'm going to use a movie connection here. For anyone that's seen World War Z, I have no idea if this is real or not. I'm assuming not, but in Israel, there's this idea in the movie, not in the real world. I don't know, but in the movie, there's this idea that there's someone in the room that has to, in essence, doubt everything that's being presented. So you're given a bunch of information and a bunch of evidence, and there's one person's job who's to say, there's no way that's going to happen. Let's plan for the eventuality that the exact opposite will happen. And I agree that is a huge boon to any creative endeavor, in that if everyone is just like, oh, it sounds great, yeah, oh, yeah, nothing gets done. And nothing good comes out of that, because the conflict of trying to connect everybody's ideas, someone needs to be, a cheertater at some level to be like, nope, we're done, this is it, this is what we're going with. But having people challenge you on something and having people kind of bring up points they think need to be addressed in those types of creative meetings are huge, because even if you don't take that sort of advice to heart, you're going to be thinking about it when you go to create whatever piece of content or whatever it is, and that might just be sitting in the background.
I'm going to disagree with you, because I'm going to do what you actually said that I should do. Okay, so the thing that we're discussing is making sure that there's creativity and interaction with disagreeable voices. With that, I think that what we need to do is to up our game, to increase our mind share, so that the next time that we come to a similar problem, or just to problems in general, that we don't put those things to the side and forget about them. Just because something is old doesn't mean that it's bad. So just because something is new doesn't mean that it's good. So the the other thing is that the benefit of a collaborative process is that you get a good idea together. But then the other idea is that if you're all working separately, and then you come back and say, okay, I've got this idea, and we're at odds. The benefit, somehow reinforcing what you were saying, Patrick, is that we all are going to find the best solution, not just a solution that we necessarily all agree on, but that does require a decision at the end of the day to decide if one is better than the other.
I think going along with, I guess, my take on this question is, sometimes it is hard to hear that people disagree, because like for me personally, I really like people telling me how awesome I am. But actually, one thing that I've learned is not so much thinking, oh gosh, they're disagreeing with me, but why are they disagreeing, and having them, like people mentioned earlier, having them map that out and starting to understand their perspective. And that goes into what we talked about earlier with understanding your community, or understanding the problem from different perspectives. Just think of it as someone bringing in a new perspective into a problem, and be open to that. Don't take it personally. If you have to, go duke it out or go have some sugar and caffeine together.
Yeah, I think you learn so much more from someone's, hopefully constructive criticism versus them just going, woo, good idea. So I think it's always helpful, and even from the community, whether it's negative feedback or, you're brainstorming with your team, I really embrace people who challenge ideas. And it's not easy. Sometimes it's hard to be that one person speaking up, but just say it, because it'll benefit everybody as a whole.
Jen, one quick question for you. And this I think this is key. If you suddenly get a bunch of like donut shops that are in the San Francisco area following you in the next 2 to 3 hours, like take every advantage you can, because you've mentioned sugar and caffeine, my two favorite things in the world, like 30 times. We should have a sugar and caffeine count. But that setup, I swear to God, if you don't get some sort of free caffeinated beverage out of this, it's criminal. It's criminal.
Okay, it's National Donut Day, everybody. So all the donuts in the world, or not all the donuts in the world, all the donut shops in the world, if you could follow me and give me free donuts and celebrate National Donut Day, I will love you forever, I swear.
All right, guys. On that note, we're out of time, but I did want to give a quick shout out to Steven, who had a question on how do you keep the creative out of your qualitative process when looking at quantitative data. So if you want to just jump over to Twitter and give him an answer when we're done here, just to make sure that he gets some feedback as well. Next week, I believe Dom and Brew are back, Carrie's back, Sarah's still off on her great Alaskan adventure, discovering that it's still daylight at 11 p.m., which is mind-blowing. We don't have a topic yet, so definitely head over to mycmgr.com, click on participate, let us know your ideas, or tweet at me, which is basically how this one came together. And again, huge shout out to Patrick for co-hosting, Kristen for covering Twitter, Rachel, Jen, and Eric for being great on panel, and to everyone who joined in on Twitter. And that's it. Happy Friday, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.